Hi guys, it's Debbie and today we're ranking all the films nominated for Best Picture at this year's Oscar ceremony. This doesn't mean that they're necessarily my personal favourite films of the year. It doesn't even mean that they're objectively the 10 best films of the year overall. We're just working with what has been nominated at the Oscars, an institution, the Academy, with which I've had an intense love and hate relationship over the years. I do think they tend to be very performative, but let's try to stick to the positive. Over the years, I've come to terms with the fact that as much as you and I might be super into films, up to date with all the film news, and appreciate films regardless of their box office achievements, for the general audience, having something attached to the Oscars creates excitement. It gets people going to the cinema for films they might have otherwise ignored, and it keeps the love for cinema alive. But enough rambling. Let's kick off at number 10 with F1, the Formula One movie. Probably the most unexpected entry on this Best Picture list. I can think of so many other good films that could have taken this spot. I'm looking at you, Park Chan-wook. Now, to be fair, the Formula One movie is actually much better than I expected. It follows a former Formula One driver who returns to Formula One after 30 years, surrounded by competitors much younger than him, in an environment in which technology now dominates everything. He has to navigate team dynamics, pressure, and the reality of no longer being the rising star. What's really interesting about this film, what really stands out, is just how realistic the racing sequences are. They used real drivers, filmed during actual race weekends, mounted cameras directly onto the cars, and the result is incredibly immersive, especially with this fast-paced editing. The music is also fantastic, composed by Hans Zimmer. You can rarely go wrong with him. As I was mentioning, the editing pulls you straight into the chaos and adrenaline of the track. But as you can tell, I'm highlighting the technical aspects of the film, not the story, not the character dynamics, and not the actors' performances. So I can understand nominations in technical categories like sound and editing, but as an overall film, to me it felt very similar to director Joseph Kosinski's previous movie, Top Gun Maverick, something that really shines because of its spectacle and technical achievements rather than the depth of its story. But moving up is Bugonia, a film I don't think anyone expected to see in the final 10 films, but I guess we're in an era of worshipping Emma Stone and everything she does, especially when paired with Yorgos Lanthimos. That said, I actually enjoyed Bugonia, something I would have never expected to hear myself say a year ago. I'm still not quite sold on the ending, but I did love the premise about this powerful CEO who is kidnapped by people who believe she's an alien. Most of the film takes place inside the house where she's been held captive, yet it never feels static. It's incredibly gripping, largely thanks to Jesse Plemons, who is brilliant as always. In this film, he delivers his character's bizarre theories with such conviction that you start to question things yourself. You're basically trapped in this wild experience alongside people who fully believe what they're saying, while Emma Stone's character is trying to figure out how to escape. Over the years, I've had a complicated relationship with Lanthimos. I love Dogtooth, The Lobster, The Killing of the Sacred Deer, and The Favourite, but I wasn't a fan of Poor Things or Kinds of Kindness, so I was pleasantly surprised to find myself enjoying this one, and honestly, I think Jesse Plemons deserves far more recognition than he's getting right now. Okay, now we have reached the point in which people might start insulting me. Sinners. Sinners follows two brothers who return to their hometown to start a juke joint, but on opening night, something supernatural happens to them. I don't want to spoil everything, although I know most of the plot details are out on the internet, but I don't want to ruin it for who hasn't seen it yet. Now, I personally don't think Sinners is this absolute masterpiece as many people are calling it. I think we're in a sort of everything everywhere all at once situation. A film that becomes hugely popular with younger audiences, dominates social media, and then gets elevated to a level that maybe doesn't fully match the craft of other nominees. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but to smash all these records, to be nominated across 17 categories, feels a bit excessive. And this isn't a horror bias. I love horror, and I've often said it's overlooked at award show. If anything, it's been improving, with Nosferatu getting recognition last year, all the discourse around the substance, and now Frankenstein and Amy Madigan getting nominated for Weapons. Horror's finally getting more attention. I really love the musical sequence in this film, and I'm so glad I saw this on the big screen. Some of the most emotional moments wouldn't have hit the same without that thumping immersive cinema experience. All that being said, I just think this is one of those moments in which we go from this is a good movie to this is the best thing that has blessed our cinemas in the last decade. Next, you'll have to bear me a minute because we have Sentimental Value, which then ties into Hamnet, and which naturally leads to Train Dreams, and this all makes sense. There is a connection, hang with me. I've recently talked about the bittersweetness of life and my personal struggles with balancing these feelings of fear, anticipatory grief, is that the correct term? Grief for something that hasn't even happened yet, fear of death, pain, trying to enjoy happy moments with the people who I love. The feelings I have for them are so intense, every moment doesn't feel long enough, but at the same time I know that sooner or later this will all come to an end. Am I spoilt and overthinking? Am I handling my relationships in the best way that I can? It's a big mess. And each of these three films I mentioned, so Sentimental Value, Hamnet and Train Dreams, all tie into those thoughts in their own way. Out of the three, the one I enjoyed the least, so I'll place it at the lowest, is Sentimental Value. It follows two sisters reconnecting with their estranged father, a film director, as we slowly piece together their shared history, their flaws, their differences, and the things they still have in common. What I loved about this film is that it feels incredibly realistic. The dialogues are nearly painfully embarrassing. There's a lot of cringe, as it is in real life. I can definitely see why fans of Trier's previous film, The Worst Person in the World, loved this film. And at this core, this film is about the parent-child relationship. One of the most fundamental dynamics in our lives and society. It's this endless chain, parents shaping children, who then become parents themselves, passing on both the good and the bad. And this leads us to Hamnet, next up in the list, which is also about parenthood, but in a much more tragic way. It speaks about Shakespeare and the death of one of his children and how this shaped his life and his career. To be fair, Shakespeare's role in this film is actually a bit smaller than I expected, as he is often away traveling for work, which definitely amplifies the feeling of grief and absence. This film is both brutally realistic and heartbreakingly beautiful, showing how humanity has struggled with the same fears, pains and losses across history. Something which is horrifyingly comforting for me in my situation right now. To quote The Holdovers, a beautiful film, the teacher says, every single darkest thought that's ever crossed your mind has already happened in history. People have already gone through it. Horrifying, but comforting. Also in Hamnet, the connection to nature is stunning, the countryside, the forest, captured with so much detail. Even the child actors in this film were incredible, shining alongside big stars like Jessie Buckley, Paul Mescal, Emily Watson. The soundtrack perfectly complements the tone, reinforcing the beauty and pain of everyday life. Jessie Buckley delivers a gut-wrenching performance. Every scene is so real. I love this film, but I would never watch it again. It's one of those films you can't even bring yourself to recommend to other people, to not have them go through that pain. And the third film in this trilogy I created about the bittersweetness of life is Train Dreams, which is the one I love the most. I even put it in my best films of the year video. Train Dreams tells the story of a logger, a man working on the construction of America's very early modern infrastructure, and it follows him from childhood into old age. Along the way, we see the friends he meets, the challenges he faces, the family he builds, and the bittersweetness of life itself. There's a quiet lesson in this film. The more you love, the more you enjoy life, the more you get attached to people, the more you're inevitably going to suffer. That's just how life is. But aside this psychological part of the film, one of the aspects that most people have praised about Train Dreams, and I completely understand why, is the cinematography. The way it depicts nature is simply stunning. Deep green forests that feel alive, crackling fires, sunsets that almost take your breath away, and night scenes that are so hypnotic in this quiet beauty. Watching it, you really feel connected to that environment, even if you've never lived it. And in an era of green screens, even for the simplest of things, this really is a treat. Next up, at number 4, is Frankenstein. I won't repeat everything I said in my best films of the year video, because honestly I could talk about this film forever. I had been waiting for this film with so much excitement as a lover of darker gothic romance stories, and this film didn't meet my expectations. It exceeded them. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein takes a story that has been told countless times and gives it one of the most tragic, heart-wrenching and beautiful renditions I've seen. The film focuses on the creature's torment, his longing for his father's love, his desire for a companion, his profound loneliness, and the cruelty experiences from humanity, and every frame really seems to reflect his isolation and suffering. If you have the opportunity, I'd also recommend checking out the behind-the-scenes featurette video film they did about the making of this film, because once you see the scale of what went into making this film, the sets, the costumes, the makeup, you can see how much care was put into crafting this film. And again, in an era where green screens and CGI are slapped onto everything, it's comforting to see a production that goes back to valuing physical artistry. But now we're on the podium, and number 3 is The Secret Agent. I've been curious about this Brazilian film for a year. I watched it only about a month ago, and I tried to go in as blind as possible. I knew some vague information about it. I decided to not watch the trailer. I had formed an idea about what I thought this film was about, and I was wrong. I don't want to spoil anything because this film is best experienced without knowing much beforehand. The plot takes its time, slowly revealing itself, feeding you pieces of information that you have to assemble as the story progresses. Without spoilers, it's the story of a man who is clearly coming from a troubled past. He is clearly hiding from something or someone. Something's catching up with him, and as all his past events catch up with him, we are fed all these small pieces of information, and we slowly build out his story over the course of the 2 hours of film. Now, when I was looking for footage to use in this video, I came across the trailer, and I was shocked at how much information Neon put in it. If you haven't seen this film, try to not watch the trailer. I also think Wagner Maurit's performance is phenomenal. He conveys a genuine emotional weight, this subtle fear, the tension of a man whose past is always threatening to catch up with him. Also, I'm not too knowledgeable about the political context of Brazil in the 70s, but even without a super educated background about that period, I think this film gives you just enough information and just enough mystery to keep you thoroughly enjoyed. Definitely recommend checking it out. If that was third place, what's in second place? At number 2, we have Marty Supreme, a film I didn't expect to rank so high. I say that because I'm not a die-hard fan of Timothée Chalamet. He's a great actor, he truly is, but some people are just elevating to this new god of cinema and blindly appreciate everything he's in. I wanted to wait and form my opinion cautiously. And I love this film. Timothée Chalamet absolutely delivers in Marty Supreme. I was completely engaged in the cinema, both loving and hating his character. The pacing, the music, the tension, everything had me on edge. I was cheering on for him while at the same time hating so many aspects of his character. In the film, Timothée Chalamet plays real life table tennis player Marty Mouser in his early years, before table tennis really even was a thing in America. The story follows him as he fights tooth and nail to break into the big tournaments, often using unconventional, illegal, and sometimes ridiculous methods to get the resources and connection he needs. The movie is essentially 2 hours of non-stop panic, of him pushing himself to the limit, playing until he's drenched in sweat, in a world that didn't yet realize how big table tennis would become. Watching this film, you feel that intensity in every second. I don't know what point you're watching this video, if it's before or after the Oscars, but as of today, which is February 22nd, I can generally see Timothée Chalamet on the stage with that Oscar in his hands. And at number 1, we have One Battle After Another, a film I think most people agree deserves the number 1 spot. I honestly haven't seen such a overall well-constructed film as this in a long time. The story follows a former member of a revolutionary group who decades later is drawn back into that dangerous world when loose ends start catching up with him and with his daughter. As I was mentioning, this film is overall so well constructed. The cinematography was breathtaking, especially in that final chase sequence. The acting is phenomenal. Sean Penn in particular is so brilliant, so convincingly nasty, determined. I want him to have that Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. The music had my legs jiggling, I was biting my nails for 3 hours, which absolutely flew by, but at the same time without relying on excessive exposition. One of the aspects I love most about this film is how it keeps a lot of information about the character's background, about this revolutionary group, nearly vague. We only get what's necessary to understand the stakes. Everything else is left to us to imagine, creating a sense of mystery and tension that keeps you on the edge of your seat. This combination of storytelling, performance, cinematographer, it just makes it a masterclass in building a suspenseful story. I loved it. But with that, we've covered all 10 films nominated for Best Picture at this year's Oscars. I'm happy for some, I'm disappointed for others. As I was mentioning at the beginning of this video, I think no other choice was much better than some of these nominees, and it's shocking it didn't get nominated even for international film. I think it could easily replace Sirat among the nominees, but now I want to know what you think about these top 10 films. So make sure to leave a comment down below, letting me know. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.